From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
I need closure.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, the real ending to the story everybody thinks they know the end to, a secret hiding place only you know about, how to make a homemade face mask that doesn't make you look like you're about to commit a carjacking, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host. She's not going stir crazy. She's already there. Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Yeah, I already stirred the crazy. I'm all stirred up with the crazy.
I think we all are.
Yeah, I know. I feel like just handling this so much better than I am. And I'm trying really hard. And I'm, sitting here in this, beautiful podcast room with all these things around it, and I could be reading more or, learning Farsi online or whatever, I want to do. And I'm just like,
oh, well, baby, you are not alone. In fact, we should have some tipsters write in or call in with their own stories about going stir crazy.
Yeah, if you have suggestions of how we don't kill each other, which I'm going to say I'm very proud of us. Neither of us has has tried to kill the other one.
I put the knives away. And
you did not. I know where they are.
They're
downstairs in that Hinkle's wood block.
The one I was going to use is anyway.
You're not a stabber.
And I've converted the rope back into a leash for the dog. So,
So had you made a noose for yourself or for moi?
Well, for both. It was going to be a murder-suicide.
A double, yeah. Okay, good, great.
It was like there was a day last week where it was just it was not just you, it was me. It was just I was tired of me. I was tired. I was fucking tired.
Never been to me.
Yes, I came to me. I went to me. I was there with me, and I didn't like it. No.
Yeah, I've never been to you either, and I don't want to be to me. So I've never been to me. So yeah, you're doing good. You're my tower of strength. When I'm collapsing, you're like everything's gonna be fine, and I'm like, I don't want anymore. I can't anymore. Do it.
And I go into the other room and do the same thing.
And then you punch some pillows and come out, and you're really I am in awe of you, and I appreciate you. And our tipsters are pretty amazing too. The ones that I am familiar with on social media have posted what they're doing to stay sane, learning crochet, or the ones that are furloughed. Or we got news last couple days that one of our beloved tipsters got furloughed until the end of May. No, end of April. End of May. May 31st. Yeah. I don't even know what fucking month it is anymore. But we're keeping the highest thoughts for, everyone out there who's listening, and for the world, that it will somehow start spinning again in the right direction, and things are going to go back, if not the way they were, maybe even better. I'll just try and say it that way.
I like that, yes.
Because
better.
Yeah, even better. So we're keeping that thought. And in the meantime, our beautiful tipsters are bored and have lots of time to submit case suggestions, and I'm grateful for that. And we had the drawing, and I put everyone's name officially into a Just the Tipsters baseball hat. And officially, I swear I did. And I pulled out one winner, and I am so happy that it is Tipster Brandy, and she gets the Tumblr and the Ulta gift card. And there were a few gentlemen in the mix too, and I thought, well, if they get an Ulta gift card, they can, maybe buy some awesome shaving shit or hair extensions or whatever boys buy. I don't know, but it was.
Do they have stuff for boys at Ulta?
They do stop it, Boys buy things too. It's a very, very tiny, small section, but
Well,
yes, they do.
It's got to be stuff that girls buy for
For boys,
because
yes,
there are
that's
no
it.
boys in Ulta other than the ones that look like they want to run.
And they're holding their girlfriend's purse. That is true.
That's true.
That is true. You're correct. It's been a while since I have been in an Ulta because we're in this just ridiculous situation here. But
Ulta, I have to say, Ultas have the cleanest men's rooms in the world.
yeah, the women's room, not so much. You know why? Because no one's ever in there.
That's right. Exactly. My point exactly.
Okay, that's nice. So if you're ever on the road and need to go to the bathroom, duck into an Ulta in a strip mall, and apparently the dude's bathroom is going to be spotless.
You can actually feel comfortable. Yes.
Yeah, the women's room in the Valencia Ulta, not so great. It's like they haven't updated it in a while. Sometimes when I go in there, I mean, I know this will let you know who I am. I straighten things up a little bit.
You're kidding
No,
me.
I'm not.
I believe it.
There's like a whole bunch of water and soap and shit on the sink, and they usually have paper towels stacked up. They have the ones, and the one in Valencia has the blower dryers too, which I hate, but they have like a stack of those really shitty folded paper towels. But I'll take a few out, and I'm not kidding. I've cleaned in there.
Darling.
Not the floors or anything.
I don't want to know that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll
Oh
shut
my
I know.
God.
I can't help it. It's like, I'm like, here I am buying, my favorite, hairspray, and you guys look like, you haven't cleaned your fucking bathroom. And anyway, this is not.
You're a very good person.
I'm a good person. This is not a review of the Ulta bathrooms, my hand to God. So I also want to say, besides Tipster Brandy is the winner of the Tumblr and the Ulta card, I want to say a special thank you to Tipster Richard and Tipster Tammy for being our newest patrons on Patreon. And the amazing Tipster Laura increased her amount of her Patreon donation every month, which is just the most amazing, kind, generous thing. We are so grateful. We don't have any advertisers, and we don't have to spend a lot of money making this, but we do spend some, and more importantly, we take our time and effort, which we love doing. And it's just the nicest thing when someone takes money out of their wallet and says, I want to thank you for creating this content, which
indeed it really is.
It is.
It means a lot, and you do get stuff when you
you do. Thank you for saying that.
Become a Patreon patron. You get some cool stuff.
You get some interesting swag.
And,
and working on getting new and different swag too. I like the stuff we have, but we're going to be adding to it, I'm sure, and definitely in the clothing line, because I'm just having so much fun with my Cricut vinyl cutter, and I can make things personalized.
Wow.
So that's
by the way, folks, we won't turn away advertisers, just so you know. As the producer of the show, I should say, any advertiser out there that wants to advertise with us, come on board.
Yeah, it's not that we're like anti-advertising. It's just, we haven't had an advertiser in a while. So things like the Patreon subscribers are precious to us. So, and if if it's not in your budget, we get it. What you could do that doesn't cost you anything except a few minutes of time would be to go to Apple Podcast or anywhere that you listen to this podcast and give us a review. You can rate a 5-star rating for us and give us a review of what you think about the podcast, what you like about it. And we're really grateful. We have some of the most fun, creative listeners who write great reviews. And this is so completely shallow, but I'm going to say it. When we send out swag to listeners and they post pictures on social media, we seriously have the most beautiful listeners. I can't even... we sent some stuff out to Redawn, and she posted a picture, and I'm like, she is stunning. It's amazing how beautiful our listeners are. And I have no idea, of their age, sometimes even of their gender, whatever if their name is something that's, that could be, either or. I have no idea what these people look like. And then we'll send them something and they post something on social media, and I'm like, you are gorgeous, and from all over. It's not like it's all women from Brazil or something. It's people from all over the world. And then when they post pictures of themselves, I'm like, you couldn't be more beautiful. And you couldn't show off a Just the Tipsters hat any better than this. You look magnificent. So I just have to say, in a shallow way, our listeners are gorgeous. I know it's so ridiculous.
I'm not allowed to comment on that.
You have to keep your mouth shut. Yeah, you can't say anything nice about anyone else. You know the rule. You got that rule book that I put in your mailbox, right?
I did. It
In
came,
the coffee room.
right. It came through the proper channels, and it was approved by HR. So I have to.
Did you sign off on it that you had read it?
Yes, and that I agree to its terms and conditions.
You did. Okay, good. Because our listeners are just downright gorgeous, and it's not. I'm not just saying that because if they were homely, I'd be like, oh, bless their hearts, they're so sweet. No, they're gorgeous and smart. And I think it was Redon who let me know that pigs can digest anything except teeth. So I wish, like anything.
That's very beautiful.
First of all, smartass, information is beautiful. Knowledge is power.
That's what I meant.
And the fact that she knows this, that they can, because I had, read that like, 6 or 8 hogs can completely decimate a 200-pound man in like 8 minutes or something. And I can't believe that statistic, but apparently it's true. But they can digest anything, bone even, bone, even sometimes clothing. I mean, it comes out in their scat, I guess. But pig scat. Oh, that's a good stripper name.
Ooh, it's a good punk band name.
Pig scat. I like it a lot. Okay, so in their scat, you can find their teeth. And while I don't think we're going to find, any teeth of anyone we may think has been disposed of in that way, because it's been 40 years this August. I think that is one of those pieces of knowledge that is like, that's brilliant. I love hearing that. I really do. It reminds me of the piece of information I learned, which made me think maybe I need to, investigate something different in my life. In my early 20s, I had worked at a printing company just before I went to start managing comedy clubs in Cincinnati. And the local funeral directors would use our printing company because it was a union press printing company. And they got all their Catholic prayer cards printed from us. And one of the funeral directors, a younger man actually, had died on the steps of the funeral home on a Saturday. He had gotten there to unlock the place and open it up, and he died on the steps. And another funeral director, an older man, came to collect his prayer cards. And I'm like, how did he die? And he's like, yeah, he had a heart attack. And I'm like, how did you know? And he said, well, because he fell on the front steps and hit his head on the concrete and there was no blood. And I'm like, what? And he said, well, his heart stopped before he hit the ground. Because if your heart keeps pumping, then the blood pushes out. And I'm like, oh! I mean, that was just like this. It was like someone cracked open my skull and opened my brain in half.
That's when you became ... A
little bit obsessed with everything involving dead people, how people get dead, who the fuck thinks they can make someone dead and then not have to pay for that. All of it just sort of, it was literally like, just a mind explosion. So
blew your mind.
Totally blew my mind right open. So speaking of that, I am navy blue and I can't talk about anyone dying or missing right now. So this case, the anniversary of this case is important right now for me because she survives. And that is something I just needed to know right now, that, we all are going to survive. Well, most of us are going to survive and we'll get through this. And we'll definitely get through this and come out the other side changed, different, again, hopefully better. And Jennifer Morey is one of those people that gives me hope. And quite frankly, there's a few cases, not exactly all together in this case, but a few mentions where people survive, and it's what I need right now. I just need to know that there are good things that happen even in the midst of really bad things and things unfolded for Jennifer in a way that she's very clear in that she said, I believe the old Jennifer Morey died April 15th of 1995. And a different Jennifer Morey is here now. And I think she's right. So it's the anniversary week of what happened to her, which is a really interesting case that was covered beautifully by the Houston Press. You may have seen the episode of the television show I Survived that she was profiled on. I know there are several podcasts who have covered it. And I mean, it is a pretty amazing story. So this beautiful Jennifer Morey is a lawyer. She had just, I guess, recently graduated law school in the Houston area. And she picks an apartment. She's, 25, a young lawyer who, is starting her life. And she picks an apartment complex that makes her feel safe. It's the Bayou Park Apartments. And they have 24-hour security. And it's from the Pinkerton Security Agency, which she'd heard of, because we've all heard of the Pinkerton Security Agency. As a kid, I remember adults saying, oh, they should just hire a Pinkerton guard.
Yeah, they've been around since the 1800s.
1800s. Alan Pinkerton came from Scotland and landed in Chicago. He was a Scottish detective and private eye. And he starts the Pinkerton Agency. And 1855 is when it actually, I guess, gelled, but he tried to start it around 1850. And he got help from like some of the railroad agencies, decided to use him. He really became, I think, or the agency became more well-known when they sort of took credit for thwarting an assassination attempt on Abraham Lincoln. And then he hired them as his private security. Right.
Before the Secret Service, the Pinkertons were considered the platinum standard in personal security.
They were. And even in the later 1800s when when the United States started the Department of Justice, they, hired them. They realized they didn't have enough funding and people to do what they want to do. So they hired them sort of, as an independent contractor. But then in the later 1800s, you couldn't be an employee of the government and be a Pinkerton agent. So they became a private security agency. And I mean, they have a very storied past. And I will tell you that I actually knew someone who was a Pinkerton guard. And it's one of my favorite stories. I won't say his name because some people listen to this who I think went to high school with me. And I know some of them listen. And I ran into him I was going to a hair salon in a strip mall in Florence, Kentucky. And he was walking around. And I was like, are you a guard? And he was a small man. He'd been small. I'd known him since the first grade. And this was like in our early 20s after graduation. And he was a security guard. He was a very tiny person. And he said, yeah, I'm a security guard here. He said, I used to work for Pinkerton. And I was like, oh, what happened? And he said, I got shot.
Oh.
And I said, oh my God, what did you do? And he said, I laid there.
That's a good answer.
All right. That's the best answer ever, I guess.
Kind of what we all would do if we were shot.
I laid there. And I thought, okay, I understand now. So I'm not saying, Pinkerton isn't well thought of in the industry because they have been around for a very long time. But still, I think when you hear this, you're going to... I don't know what one does to vet someone to be a security person, but I'm just horrified. But so Jennifer has this beautiful apartment, starting off her life on Friday night, the 14th of April, 1995. She goes with some friends to the ale house. She's responsible. It's midnight. A friend drives her home because she's had a couple of drinks, and she goes into her apartment, takes off her makeup, goes to bed. At 4 a.m., she wakes up and there's someone straddling her and pressing something against her neck. And she's, thinking it's a dream. So she's trying to shake herself awake and it isn't working. And she realizes she's about to be raped. And she's trying really hard to push this intruder off of her, but he holds her down. And he's saying, Jennifer, stop struggling. Jennifer, stop screaming. She's screaming for her life. And she's like, how does he know my name? How does he know me? And as she's screaming and trying to fight for her life, he slashes her throat. He starts at her right ear and then just slices her neck.
Oh.
And she realizes that blood is pouring out of her. And, she's like, okay, I'm just going to have to let go because he's going to kill me. And she just sort of stops fighting. He grabs her by her beautiful blonde hair and pulls her off the bed and throws her into the bathroom and shuts the door and says, if you come out, I'll kill you. So she's pressing herself, her body against the bathroom door and pushing her feet against the tub so that she can try with whatever. She doesn't have a lot of strength left in her upper body because of the deep wound, but she can still feel her lower body has strength in her and her legs. And she's pressing her feet against the bathtub to keep the door shut. And she realizes that she's bleeding heavily. And she hears things get more quiet and more quiet. And then she hears a zipper. And it's the man putting back his pants back on. And she's like, I'm hoping he's leaving. After he told her, if you come out of there, I'll kill you. She waits for just a few more minutes and it feels like forever. And she tries the door and she can't get out. She knows that she's going to bleed to death if something doesn't happen soon to help her. She's pulling, and the door doesn't even have a lock. She doesn't understand why it's so hard to open, except that maybe she'd pressed against it so hard that it has gotten jammed. So she keeps, she actually even kind of laughs to herself and thinks, well, I guess I'm going to die in my bathroom without a lock on the door. And I don't know why. But she keeps pulling. She never stops. She knows she has to keep trying. And she finally pulls the door open. And she gets out in the hallway. And she keeps flicking the lights. And they're not working. She doesn't know why. She goes to get her phone. And it's dead. Someone had cut the electricity and the phone line to her apartment. But they did not know that she had a cell phone. And she gets her cell phone and dials 911. And she gets a wonderful man named Richard. And it's his first night as a 911 dispatcher.
Oh, my God.
It's his first night. So he's trying so hard to calm her down. And he's like, tell me where you're injured. Tell me where the wounds are. Do you know if you have wounds other place other than your neck? And she's like, I don't know. I can't tell you. I can't feel. And he's like, please take a towel, hold it to your neck as tight as you can without hurting yourself. He just keeps talking to her and he's trying to calm her down. And he assures her that, paramedics are on the way. The fire department's on the way. And it's now 10 minutes later and she's like, someone's knocking on my door. Who is that? And the 911 dispatcher is like, they're not there yet. And she hears someone say, it's Brian Gibson. I'm security for the building. And she says, it's security. They're here. And he says, do not open the door. Do not open the door. I know the police and the paramedics are not there yet. And no one has contacted building security.
Oh, boy. Oh, wow.
This is his first night on the job.
Oh, my God.
First night on the job. So the officers show up, and the security guard from Pinkerton, Brian Gibson, says, oh, my gosh, I just was doing my rounds, and I see a guy jumping from her balcony, and he went across this field, and he's got some blood on him. And he cut me trying, I have a cut on my hand. He cut me when I was, trying to capture him. And the police shine their flashlights across the field that's very dew covered and there's no footprints. And they make their way into Jennifer's apartment and they find a knife, male underwear covered in her blood, and later on, Brian Gibson's DNA, and a Pinkerton security cap.
Oh.
When they check Brian Gibson and interview him, they find out he is missing his cap and his underwear.
Oh.
And he had shaved his pubic area in an attempt to not leave a trace of evidence, but instead he did. And what had happened is he had come back to her apartment realizing he had left those items.
Okay.
And that's why he knocked on the door.
Okay.
10 minutes later.
Yeah.
And Richard from 911 said, "Do not answer the door."
Thank God. Thank God.
Yes. So Jennifer Morey doesn't do well after this, attack, the most personal attack of your life, in that you're in your home asleep and someone who is paid to protect you is on top of you, raping you and trying to murder you. I can't imagine a bigger violation. I mean, this is someone you're paying for an apartment, and you pay extra for 24-hour security because you're a female who lives alone. You put your trust and your money into an operation that you think is going to be better for you, and you end up raped and attempted to be murdered.
It's just, it's unbelievable. And in most cases, the victim dies in situations
Absolutely.
like this. And in some ways you think, thank God she lived, but she has to live with this memory.
Well, and thank God that she is who she is. And she's very clear that it was really difficult afterwards. She, 2 weeks after the attack, she moved to a different apartment complex. She, went back to work at a law firm, and she really just can't function. She didn't take enough time for herself. She sees a man she doesn't recognize walking on the floor of her office building, and she snaps. She packs up everything. She moves from her new apartment in the Woodlands to her mother's house in Fort Worth. For 6 months, she doesn't really leave her mom. And if her cat accidentally bumped into something or knocked it over, she would call 911. At night, she couldn't sleep. She just stayed up, like walking around the house, because she was afraid of the dark, of night, of someone coming in.
Oh, that's terrible.
Her whole schedule gets...
So she moved from Houston to Fort Worth?
Mm-hmm, to be with her mother.
So she just basically had to give up her job then?
Yep. And it's, 7 months after the original attack in April, her brother kind of shakes the shit out of her and says, "You need to snap out of it. You need to get your life together." So she starts applying at temporary agencies. And of course, most of them said, you're overqualified. But she, got a couple of assignments, and she wasn't really happy with them. She didn't feel comfortable at all. And she felt she wasn't treated very well in these temporary assignments, which a lot of times you aren't. You're just plugged in until someone comes back from vacation or maternity leave. But she stayed and kept working. It gave her some sort of a purpose. And 3 years later, in 1998, a Houston jury sentenced Gibson to 20 years in prison. And that felt like a devastation to her. She felt like he deserved more. And
I think everybody listening to you right now thinks he deserved more.
Yeah, he absolutely deserved more than, 20 years. But she gets a temporary job at a Justin boot company, and she works in product development, and she enjoys that. She makes some friends, and she actually meets the guy that she is going to end up marrying a few years later, even after she had such a hard time trusting anyone. And she even starts thinking about returning to practice law. And then in 1998, there's a settlement with Pinkerton. And she said, I'm finally ready to open my own family law practice in Fort Worth. and my life right now, she says, I'm very proud of it. Even though she says, I died that night and I'm a different person now. But she really understands, I don't want to say that it's magical, but there's some magic that happens in this horrible situation. She, Brian Gibson, slashed her throat, but he missed her jugular vein just by a few millimeters, but he missed it. And, the cut was so deep, doctors can't explain to her why the nerve that controls the facial muscles that she has wasn't severed. He, in his slashing, the knife caught the corner of her right eye, but somehow the blade missed her eyeball.
Wow.
The knife on her neck caught on a gold chain her mother had given her as a high school graduation present. Otherwise, the blade should have just pierced her larynx.
Jeez.
She said there was a series of little miracles that prevented me from dying. And I believe that.
Absolutely.
I believe that very much. That somebody, as terrible as that situation was, somebody up there was looking out for her, and a series of miracles. Like, why did he throw her in the bathroom and shut the door? I guess he thought she was going to die, and she didn't. Why, when he came back, this man's first night on the job as a 911 dispatcher, and he goes with his gut and says, do not open the door. I don't care if that person's saying they're security. I don't know who they are. Don't open the door for anyone other.
That was incredible.
Incredible. On the job, just boom, made that decision, and it was absolutely the right one. And the beautiful thing is that when Jennifer finally marries the love of her life, who she's still married to, Richard is a guest at the wedding. The 911 dispatcher.
Oh, that's awesome.
Is the guest at the wedding. So I just need to say the Pinkerton agency is, now specializes in something. One of their specialties is risk management. And I don't know if producer Mark wants to discuss this, but
I didn't know that they did that now.
Yeah, that's one of their hallmarks is risk management, which is frightening. So
yeah, I mean, it's especially since obviously they didn't really do a good job of vetting this guy.
Well, that's the other thing. After Jennifer's lawsuit, 130 of the 1,000 Pinkerton security guards in the Houston area were found to have had prior felonies.
How many?
130. Including a security guard who was observed to have shown a 13-year-old girl his badge and gun, threw her into his car, drove her to a secluded area where he raped and thought he killed her, left her for dead, cut her throat, and she crawled up to the freeway and got help. And he got arrested. Wow.
It seems like the entire agency is filled with rapists and would-be killers who don't know how to finish the job, thank God.
I was going to say, that's the thing. It's like they're showing their ass and that they, are really not great killers. What's interesting is that, as far as vetting, Brian Gibson, Jennifer Morey's perp, who assaulted her, had been shuffled around to 3 different places within Pinkerton because of complaints of women. And it was like...
Really?
Yes. And he was given the assignment at the Bayou Park Apartments, the night shift, as a punishment.
After he had... okay.
3 times.
Okay. So... you know how big the settlement was that she got, or was that confidential?
I'm sure it was confidential, but it was enough for her to start her own law firm.
Yeah, because that's just unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
And the response from Pinkerton is like, well, he lied on his application. Well, it's your fucking job to find out that he lied.
Well, yeah, and moreover, if you've got, all it should take is one complaint to get him off out of where he's in contact with women. I mean, it may be difficult to fire him the first time because of who knows the employment laws, but you don't. I mean, if you have one complaint from a woman, you got to sideline the guy. That's what's amazing to me is that they gave him 3 opportunities before he finally actually attacked somebody and almost killed her.
Well, yeah, he had three previous complaints where women were like, he makes me feel uncomfortable. He has access to, to my apartment and other women's apartments, and he makes me feel uncomfortable. And the attorney who represented Jennifer in her suit against Pinkerton said, this guy is supposed to have stability in his past employment. He was supposed to have a high school diploma or a GED. He didn't have either of those things. He didn't have any sort of education, and he did not even a GED, and he didn't have any, stability in his employment. And he had 3 strikes against him, complaints by women. And to punish him, you give him the overnight shift at an apartment complex where it's a lot of single women.
Yeah, that makes just so much sense. And now they're in risk management. Let's hope that they've cleaned up their act a little bit.
Well, what I was going to mention is that when, I started this podcast, I mentioned to producer Mark some things, and Mark said, well, I've had a little experience with a very uncomfortable situation also. So I'll let you tell the story if you'd like.
It was a number of years ago. It's got to be close to 20 years ago now. But yeah, I worked for a developer, and it's probably more than 25 years ago. But I worked for a developer, a real estate company, and they were building condos down here in Southern California, and there was a woman that bought one of our condos, and it was her first night out of the house. This is the first time she had left her parents.
First night on her own in her new condo, and one of the maintenance people still had a master key that they hadn't changed yet. She hadn't gotten the lock changed because it was her first night there.
Right, they hadn't changed, so she had her own lock yet, and so he got in and murdered her. Murdered her, and I remember this because he was represented in the criminal trial by Leslie Abramson, the same attorney that represented the
Menendez brothers.
The Menendez brothers, and he's in jail now. And of course, my company had to go through a lawsuit, and it was settled with her family.
It was, her first night in her condo that she purchased for herself. And, someone you put your trust in. I mean, obviously, a maintenance person isn't the same as a guard paid to, protect you. But a maintenance person is paid, and you're paying for their, part of their fees, their pay to take care of the place that you've purchased, that you, love and want to keep, and you're violated in your own home. I mean, I'm still, that's, of all the things to be afraid of, that's one of my big ones. And I don't understand that mindset. I just am never going to, of someone who thinks they can come into your home, your castle. I think that's what bothered me so much about the Golden State Killer is the bravado, the raw
arrogance,
the raw hubris that you can come into someone's home, and do what you think, you're allowed to do, that you should be able to do
whatever you want to do.
To do whatever you want to do. It's stories, like what happened to Jennifer, that, and I swore I would never do another survived episode, because of Survival Month in August of 2019 was the hardest month I've ever done, thinking I was doing something so positive and uplifting that, stories of survival. But the problem is, and Mark and producer Mark pointed it out, we get to hear, because they've survived, we get to hear the horror.
Right.
We get to hear up front and personal, the horror. But Jennifer's story is so hopeful for me, hopeful and beautiful, that, she ends up with a 911 operator, dispatcher Richard, who is a friend, becomes a friend for the rest of her life. It comes to her wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was his first night on the job, and he stepped up, and he had more, power and love than Brian Gibson, who, thinks he can use a master key and get through a deadbolt and get in and do something terrible to someone using her name, calling her name. Shut up, Jennifer. Shut up, Jennifer. I'm going to kill you. Shut up, Jennifer. Stop screaming, Jennifer. I can't imagine anything more terrible than that. You're being attacked by someone and they know you, and you're thinking, you're combing your memory banks. How do I know this person? And, you don't know them. They've been stalking you. Jennifer said, in her inimitable way, I feel like that Brian Gibson was set loose in a candy store and he was able to pick out the flavor of candy he liked. And that is a terrible way to say it, and yet it also is the best definition. So even though a series of little miracles prevented Jennifer Morey from dying that night, I don't want any of our beautiful listeners to have to rely on miracles. If you live in an apartment or a condo or complex with security, that's always a good thing. But always have your own backup plan and security. And more cowbell.
And if you'd like to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.